Hey, so earlier this week, She-Hulk, Attorney at Law, ended up finishing with his final episode, episode 9, Whose Show Is This? And so I figured I'd stop and rank all 9 of the episodes from the worst to the best. With that said, let's get started. Coming in last place for me is going to be the finale, episode 9, Whose Show Is This? Overall, I thought this was a very clumsy finale from start to finish, where overall it was just like mean-spirited towards Jim. Todd becoming, like the Hulk King and hulking out looked unbelievably stupid and looked like something that would, like the effects they used for his version of the Hulk, looked like something that belonged on SNL more than it did on an actual MCU show. The whole idea of her breaking the fourth wall, while cute enough, and getting to see her break into the Disney Plus app, had a few interesting little laughs here and there. Overall, it felt like a lazy way to just change out something that happened at the very end of the season because they didn't really have a plan on what they wanted to do to end the season. And so they just took the lazy way and like, oh, hey, let's have her break out Disney Plus and confront, the head of Marvel. And hey, wouldn't it be even more hilarious if it wasn't actually Kevin Feige, but Kevin is actually a floating AI robot head? That wasn't funny. That was just, to me, that was kind of stupid. But yeah, overall, a lackluster finale. They built up the whole thing early on in the season, like in episode 1 and 2, about the whole idea of Bruce going up into space to go to Sakaar. And they kind of tease that he's going there to get his son. His son shows up for like maybe 2 seconds in the finale. And it's just like, oh yeah, hey, here's my son. His name's Scar. And then it's literally the next episode. It's literally the next scene. And it's like, okay, so I guess he's the thing. I mean, we'll learn more about him in the next show, I guess, or the next movie or whatever, whatever. But yeah, overall, just a lackluster finale through and through. Up next for me, in 8th place for me, is going to be episode 6, Just Jen. Overall, I thought this was a very lackluster filler episode that was just very mean-spirited with the way they handled the whole wedding episode. They very much tried to make the bride Lulu much of a bridezilla character, to where she was just like irritating and obnoxious throughout the entire episode, and treating Jen more like a housemaid who was having to clean up after all the bridesmaids and groomsmen. It was not enjoyable. Apparently, they cared so little about the character of Jen for this wedding that her groomsman ends up being a dog that looks like it is like half alive, like its mouth was all messed up and it's got messed up legs. They make a joke about, oh, it had to be resuscitated this morning to even be able to attend the wedding. And that's like, okay, so you're making fun of a crippled dog. That's like real funny. The whole fight with her and Titania at the end had potential to be really cool and interesting, but then they decided to be real classy and have Titania slip on ice and bust her teeth. Hilarious. Coming up in 7th place for me is going to be episode 3, The People versus Emil Blonsky. Overall, I thought this had very much potential to be a really good episode when it was dealing with the concept of Jennifer Walters having to defend Emil Blonsky or the Abomination. When it was doing that stuff, it was fantastic. When they were doing the stuff with the Asgardian elf chick who had been impersonating Megan Thee Stallion, and that was just like, it felt ridiculous. It felt like something, again, like you would see like on a Saturday Night Live, like skit. Like, it did not feel serious at all. It felt like a joke. Something that very much will fit in something like Thor: Love and Thunder. I do not know what's going on with Thor stuff lately, but like, if it has to do with Thor anymore, you're basically going to be, expecting a joke. And this is no exception, and it was very disappointing. Coming up next for me is going to be episode 5. Coming up next for me is going to be episode 7, The Retreat. Overall, this felt more like a filler episode more than anything. And the whole thing with the characters of like Mambo, El Aguila, I think is what his name was, and Porcupine just felt like very uninteresting characters. They kept on cutting to this character named Saracen and being like, oh yeah, he thinks he's a vampire. But then again, he might actually be a vampire. Oh no, wait, he just thinks he's a vampire. Like, oh, he makes jokes about drinking blood. Like, okay. Like, okay, like, what are y'all doing with this? Like, and they never do anything with it. They make a joke in the finale about, about him slipping like chicken blood into people's tea and stuff, but they don't really clarify, like, okay, is this guy actually a vampire or is he just some delusional weirdo? The character of Porcupine, he is literally just there for somebody to be in a smelly costume and pull his mask off and expose, like a dirty looking face, and people to be like, oh man, dude, you're stinky as hell. Like, that's literally his only purpose for being in the episode. There are a few good little moments here and there with Jennifer having to actually, really reconcile, and come to terms with having value over both her Jen self and her She-Hulk self. And that stuff is pretty neat, but overall, still not really that enjoyable. Coming up next is going to be Mean, Green, and Straightforward Into These Jeans, which is episode 5. Overall, this was probably the most enjoyable of the Titania-related episodes. The idea of, Jennifer Walters, having to sue for, the right to use the name She-Hulk. The idea that, as soon as the name She-Hulk became popular, this Titania chick, decided to trademark it for herself in order to become more internet famous. Kind of interesting. Interestingly handled. I feel like Titania in this episode had the most enjoyability factor as just being someone annoying. But even this episode kind of highlights that that's basically all she is. She's just an annoying character. Maybe if they would use her more in the season and actually had her be like an actual threat and like made her out to be like the big villain of the show, it could work out good. But this episode especially really just kind of just shows that, yeah, she's basically a joke side villain that you're not really supposed to take that seriously, who's just an annoyance. Coming up next is going to be episode 1, A Normal Amount of Rage, or the pilot episode. Overall, I thought this was a very enjoyable pilot for the series. Getting to see, like the chemistry between, Mark Ruffalo's Bruce Banner and, Tatiana Maslany as Jennifer Walters, or as she becomes in this episode, She-Hulk. They have pretty good chemistry together. Pretty nice seeing how they end up working off of each other. And yeah, the only thing that really keeps this kind of down is you only get Jennifer Walters and Bruce Banner in this episode until it lasts like 2 minutes of the episode. Like you have Ginger Gonzaga as Nikki, and then I forgot what the other male lawyer's name was that was in this episode, but they both show up in like the first like 2 minutes at the very beginning of the pilot, and then they show up at the very end. Titania shows up at the very end and has like a very, very brief fight with Jennifer. Overall, a decent enough pilot, but there are still 2 more episodes up above it. Coming up next for me is going to be episode 8, Ribbit and Ribbit. Overall, I think this is a enjoyable enough show, a very good episode that dealt really good with showing Daredevil showing up in this episode and showing the character of Leapfrog. Getting to see him was very enjoyable in this show, and really getting to see how Matt Murdock and Jennifer Walters really, like play off of each other. They have really good chemistry. Charlie Cox and Tatiana Maslany work really good together. And yeah, just getting to see She-Hulk and Daredevil. I like the way that whenever they fight, that it actually takes advantage of the fact that like she cannot beat him in a physical confrontation, but the fact that her like sonic Hulk clap, that it's been established in the MCU already that Daredevil has hypersensitive hearing, and so a sonic Hulk clap to a normal person would be devastating. For him, he has hyper hearing, so that is like what it would be for a normal person is amplified by like 10, and of course it like drops him almost immediately. I thought it was pretty clever. That was clever writing. But coming up in number 1 for me is going to be episode 4, Is This Not Real Magic? Overall, I thought this was a fantastic episode that took advantage of really showing just how well this show could be when it decided to balance the idea of legal drama and the idea of Jennifer Walters actually trying to do super hearing as a She-Hulk. I think the idea of getting to see She-Hulk and Wong fight these little goblin creatures was very fun and enjoyable. The character of Madison was very kind of ditzy and goofy, but I think she had a really, like joyful, like infectious chemistry, especially, with Wong. Overall, that's my number one pick for the top episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Let me know in the comment section down below. How would you rank these 9 episodes? We'd love to hear your opinions. Have a good night.